when Velvet Revolver was first looking for singers, and when Scott came into the band, it was one of those riffs that just never got used. So I sort of resurrected it for my record, and then it instantly sounded like Ian Astbury. So that's who I called up, and fortunately got him to sing it. Now, Crucify the Dead was a riff that I actually wrote for a soundtrack for a movie that I was scoring, sort of simultaneous with writing this album. And when I wrote the first part of the song, it instantly sounded like Ozzy Osbourne. So once I sort of written the part, it's a small part for the movie, I expanded on the music and made a demo and sent it to Ozzy, who really liked it, which after having sent him the song, I think I was justified in my thinking for that. Now this particular tune is actually sort of special because it was something that I wrote for this movie that I was scoring, and it had a strip club scene with all these girls dancing, and so I wrote this sort of riff and had this particular kind of drum beat. And after having seen Fergie sing rock and roll live a few times, it just seemed like the perfect song for Fergie to do her rock thing. So contacted Fergie and went over to her house and played her the song, and she really liked it and came over to where I was doing my demos at and put down an amazing vocal. And it would actually, that vocal would have been on the record had it not been for the fact that the actual recording quality of the equipment that we were using wasn't appropriate for making the record. So we brought her back in the studio where I actually did the basic tracks and had her redo the vocal, which actually was even better than the demo vocal. So this is the first time anybody's heard Fergie really doing rock and roll on record. Miles Kennedy, and worked on another song on the record with him, decided this would be perfect for him. It was great, and I couldn't figure out who was going to sing it. And it eventually, sadly enough, sort of got shelved. And I came to the point where we had 13 songs on the record, and we wanted to have a 14th song that maybe we could make a single out of. And all of a sudden I thought of that riff, and having met Miles Kennedy and worked on another song on the record with him, decided this would be perfect for him, which I was totally right. I sent him the riff and he came back with this amazing vocal. So that would be Back from Cali. Promise is a song that it's a sort of quirky. Musically, it's a little bit different for me. And it's not something that I could think of anybody but Chris Cornell to sing it, because he's got that kind of melodic voice and also the kind of rasp that sort of uniquely fit it. So I sent it to Chris, and Chris really liked it, and it was really an honor for me to get to actually work with Chris, because I've been a fan of Chris's forever, all the way back in the late 80s. And when I first got turned on to Soundgarden. So it was great that he was really inspired by the song and came up with a great lyric and a great melody. And we hung out in the studio and we actually recorded it and had a great time, and it was definitely a cool experience. He and I have known each other for a long time, sort of in passing, and in working on this song, I actually got to really sort of get to know him as a person and hang out with him and just shoot the shit. And he's just a really cool guy, and great singer, great person. And it's just one of the nice things about working on this record was just getting to know people on a one-to-one basis. The first single from my record is a song that I wrote with Andrew Stockdale called By the Sword. And it was just, Andrew's one of those guys, young singer that I first heard obviously with Wolfmother's first record, and I just thought he had this phenomenal voice, and it's just his whole delivery had a certain cool panache to it. Anyhow, so this song to me just screamed of Andrew, and had to go through a bunch of manager stuff to try and track him down because he's from Australia and sort of hard to reach. But it turned out that he was recording Cosmic Egg literally 200 or 300 yards up the street from the studio that I was making the record. So went over and met him, really nice guy, and sat down and talked about the song and listened to the music, and got together the next day with some acoustic guitars and sort of banged it out relatively quickly. And then the next day after that went in and actually recorded the song for real, and he did the vocals, and just really, really liked the guy. He's got a very genuine rock and roll spirit and knows exactly what he likes and what he doesn't like. It was actually one of these songs where one of the few guys that came in he was like, you know, I really like that riff without the wah pedal right there. And I was like, really? So I actually tried it doing without the wah pedal, and he was right. So he had some influence on how I approached the song as far as my guitar playing was concerned. So anyway, this is By the Sword. Now Gotten is a song which is actually the most different for me stylistically, and definitely the most different song on the record. But it was something that I'd been writing on acoustic for a while, and being that it was my solo record, I could sort of get away with doing it because I don't know if that it would have worked in Velvet Revolver. But it was just some piece of music I was really attached to. And once I'd finally sort of finished an arrangement, instrumental arrangement, I started thinking about who should sing it. And Adam Levine, who's got a beautiful voice, came to mind. So I was actually a little bit trepidatious about sending it to him because I wasn't sure. Sometimes you can write something and only you like it and not everybody else is going to like it. And this was one of those kind of songs where I wasn't sure if he was going to dig it or not. So I sent it to him. And the funny thing was I didn't hear back from him right away, so I figured he didn't dig it. And then I got this crazy email from him saying, oh, this is awesome, you know, blah, blah, blah. So we got together over at his house, and his house, funnily enough, is about just like literally around the corner from the house I used to live in with Guns N' Roses back in like 1986. And so that sort of brought some memories home. And we worked on the song, made really hardly any changes to it, maybe like one minor change to it, and whipped this out. And the cool thing about this song was watching Adam come into the studio and sing it with this sort of angelic, high, sort of falsetto kind of voice, and actually not having to do any edits or any fixes, which was pretty amazing. So, you know, my experience in the studio for somebody to do a track just straight through like that. But anyway, it turned out to be a really, really great song, and there you have it, Gotten. So this track is one of the songs that got to do with one of my idols, of all-time idols, Lemmy Kilmister from Motorhead, and it was just, you know, simple rock song, but it just had a lot of power to it. So it screamed of Lemmy, and it was a real honor when he called me back and said, I've got a lyric for it already, and when do we get together in the studio and do it? And it was as simple as all that. So made a date to go in the studio and record it, and he showed up with his bass. I'd gotten him some booze and some cigarettes and some potato chips, I think was on the rider for the day, and wrote this amazing set of lyrics, which I think I related to a lot. So it's got a very sort of special kind of thing to it. And that was it. We just sort of banged it out, and it's definitely full on Lemmy, and it's great because it comes on the record. It's right after Adam Levine's track, so you get this insane contrast, which is sort of the sort of spirit of the whole record. This particular track with David Grohl and Duff was a song that I'd written this riff in a couple of the different parts, and it sounded like Dave Grohl doing the vocals. And so, you know, I tracked him down, I told him I had this song, and he said send it. And I sent it to him, and I just couldn't seem to get a response. And basically I was trying to get him to sing it. And he had offered to play drums on it because he was really into his drums. And I was like, no, well, I mean, that's great, but I really want you to sing it. And I just couldn't seem to get him to commit to it. So probably about 3 months went by before I sort of finally sat down with Dave and go, okay, so what's up? And he goes, I really don't like singing on other people's records, but I would love to play drums on this track. So basically I wrote it into an instrumental, asked Duff if he would come down and play bass on it. And we went in the studio, and this is one of those quick, like, I think learning the song in its entirety, it took about 3 takes to get this down. It's got a very sort of live feel. And the song is called Watch This because at the very top of the song, you can hear Dave in the background before we start the song saying, watch this. So it seemed like an appropriate title. All right, now this track, Hold On with Kid Rock. Kid Rock's somebody that I've known for a while and I've jammed with, and he's just one of these guys who is so professional and so knows exactly what he likes and doesn't mess around. And I really sort of dig working with him because he's got a really great sort of work ethic, and I enjoy being around people like that. So this was a song that was a real collaboration. It started off with well, actually what I did was I sent him 2 songs because Kid Rock is sort of a chameleon. He's a great rap guy, but at the same time he's a great singer as well. So I sent him 2 songs. One of them, the first one, he didn't respond to at all, and then I sent him the second one and he responded right away. And that's what ended up being I Hold On. And it was just a riff that I found on one of my tapes that I'd written on the road during the last Velvet Revolver tour, and I didn't remember it all. It was like the last riff on the tape, and had no recollection of writing it, but I thought it was really cool, so I made a whole song out of it, or at least a few parts, sent it to Kid Rock, and then I went down to Kid Rock's, or Bobby's house in Michigan, and we sat together and just basically worked on the song from the bottom up, and I think it came out really good. And yeah, like that. It was just a pleasure working with Bobby, so here you go. This song, Nothing to Say, is the first opportunity I've had in many, many years to be able to do a full-blown sort of heavy metal type musical approach. None of the bands that I've been in prior really sort of do this kind of stuff, but I can get away with murder on my own record, so anyway, this was a song that I'm managed by the same people that manage M Shadows, and so we decided let's get in touch with M Shadows, and he came down to the place where I was doing my demos, and we sat and worked on it. And actually, you know, he was great because even though I'd never met him before, right away, you know, he just got in there and started working really hard on the lyrics and the arrangement, and it turned into what was really sort of a quick kind of process, and turned into something very serious and sort of epic in its sort of arrangement and everything. So it was a real pleasure working with M Shadows, and I thought this song came out really great. Plus it satisfied a sort of heavy metal thing in me that I really needed to get off my chest. So this is called Nothing to Say. All right, now this song was basically the tune where I really sort of discovered Myles Kennedy. This was one of my favorite pieces of music that I had written while I was, you know, sitting in hotel rooms across the country with Velvet Revolver on our last tour. And it was, funnily enough, it was one of the first things that I demoed, and the last thing that I actually recorded. And I couldn't think of who to sing it, and I thought of this guy, Myles Kennedy, that I'd been hearing about, and then finally checked him out on YouTube. And it was just, you know, fantastic vocals. So I sort of just thought, well, I'd throw caution to the wind and just send this guy who I don't know, a demo of this song. And he really liked it. And a few days later, sent me back this fantastic set of lyrics and melody and all that. And so we got together a couple of weeks later and recorded this song called Starlight. And he's just mind-blowing. So if anything was great coming out of this record, it was a chance to work with Myles Kennedy and just check out somebody new that I really didn't know much about. And this is called Starlight. Now this song is something that I wrote for a score in this movie called This Is Not a Movie. It's a independent film that I wrote the score for, and it's all guitars. And there's this one sort of hypnotic scene in the movie out in the desert. It's a long story, you'd have to see it. But anyway, so I wrote this sort of arpeggiated acoustic thing, which I'd been sort of noodling around with for a little bit, and then finally applied it to this one particular scene, and decided that I wanted to make it a song on my solo record. And I was looking for the right voice, and this is the only song on the record where I had, basically I was working with somebody who's Rocco DeLuca, who I didn't know, but I had an idea of what kind of vocal I wanted, but I just didn't know who that vocal was. And then somebody having nothing to do with my record came along and said, have you ever heard this guy sing Rocco DeLuca? He's really good. And I was like, just listen to it just out of interest, just to hear what it was. And it turned out it was the voice that I needed for this song. So I contacted him, and we got together at the little garage in somebody's house that I was doing my demos at, and he came down, just a sweetheart of a guy, and laid down this wonderful vocal for it, and it's very sort of dark and mysterious, and it was just perfect for the actual song. So one of my favorite kind of different songs on the record. Now this track I did with Iggy Pop, and Iggy and I have a pretty long history. I've known him since I was basically pretty young, or at least we met. I don't know if he remembers meeting me back then, but I was pretty much a little kid. But also one of the huge heroes in rock and roll, and a huge influence on me, and just an icon. And I love working with him. And this particular piece of music was something that I wrote in 2004 as it came to me in a dream. The actual music came to me in a dream, and I got up and I sort of made a quick demo of it. And it was introduced with Velvet Revolver, but just never turned into a song. So when I was doing my solo record, I thought I got to resurrect that piece of music. And so I did, and as I was writing it, all of a sudden I was thinking Iggy Pop would be the perfect guy to sing this. So I sent the song to Iggy, and Iggy called me up a couple days later in true sort of rock and roll fashion. He calls me up and he goes, "Here, check this out." And he plays the tape on a stereo in the back of the room somewhere, puts the phone down on a table and starts singing it live in the middle of the room. And it was just such a cool, it's like old school moment for me. And so he was very excited, and he flew in. We rented him a convertible Mustang because that's what he wanted to drive, and he came down to the studio, and he was actually the first singer to come in and start doing vocals. And at this point, I say this all the time, but it really was to sort of set the pace for the making of the whole record. And it was so easy working with Iggy that we made it, that's the way, how easy it should be on every track, and we sort of made it that way. So it was great inspiration for the whole record, working with Iggy Pop. This is We're All Gonna Die.